All right, so I'm here with Justin Meyer, and as you can see, Justin here is a diehard John Deere guy.
Yeah, totally.
No,
Lifetime.
This is a White Oliver kind of video here. Actually, there's a little bit of other AGCO sneaking in there.
Yep.
But interesting that you have a couple of White Workhorses, and I'm actually a big fan of the White Workhorses. And I kind of remember that as a kid growing up, seeing the advertising for the White Workhorses, thinking it's a pretty cool tractor. And really, of all the 90s tractors, of all the 1990s, and for, I guess you could probably say that 1990s tractors are probably about as good as it gets. That's the pinnacle of reliability and comfort. You know, maybe not the pinnacle of comfort and technology, but when you factor in reliability,
Yep.
that was a great time. And of all those wonderful 90s tractors, I think the White Workhorse probably has the highest resale value. Because when you look at, they were way cheaper new,
Yep.
and today they bring pretty good money if you got a really nice one.
Kind of a cult following tractor.
Yeah, because that would truly be the end of...
And a White 92 was the last year, which this tractor is. Black frame is 92 only.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, and I would say the Workhorse was kind of a cool story from the standpoint of you had the resources of Deere and Case and IH and Deutz Corporation and Alice Chalmers and Allied had White no idea. You had a short line manufacturer that had a tractor.
I think they kind of were picking up the pieces and scrambling to make a buck.
Yeah.
Right at the end, that's really what it felt like. The rear end on that tractor is still Charles City.
Yeah.
Charles City supplied them, and they shipped them to Coldwater for assembly there. And then this tractor was actually out of the Independence.
Yeah, that's a Missouri built, right?
Yeah, Missouri built tractor. And then actually the last year, that tractor, that's not Argent silver. That's Gleaner silver. So an AGCO White, that's Gleaner silver paint. And then the black frame. So.
Yep.
But yeah, it's all Charles City ideas, and yeah, plant closed down in '93, and things moved on to that full power shift with the 6,000 workhorses. But
yeah, and that's they closed down Coldwater then, didn't they? To move everything to Missouri.
Yeah, things changed quick. I kind of quit studying these tractors once they got into the AGCO White era. I always kind of thought I don't know if I'll ever get that new, but
Yeah.
No, they're a very simple tractor, reliable as can be with that Cummins engine. It's
that's a 5.9 in the
5.9 in this 125. Yep. 145's got intercooled 5.9.
And there's a 5.9 in the 1755.
Correct. Yep.
Not factory, but
not
it's
factory. Nope, that's a repower. So anybody from this area may have remembered Dale McNamara out of Pine Island. So he worked at Luke Brothers in the day, later worked at Rochester Ford, and ended his career at Bishop and Wachholz and Casson. He went on his own in those early days, working out of his garage in Pine Island. One of the things he did were some of these repowers, and that was kind of popular, fixing that. These had 310 Waukesha's from factory, and a lot of them like to throw rods. And this particular tractor here, we are second owner. This tractor was sold brand new out of Cresco, Iowa, and the engine had blown up. The guy he purchased it from told him that he could not junk the tractor out. It was too clean. It's original this way back. This is repainted. You can see it's a little bit flatter green. And this frame was repainted because it was from a white. There's this black paint there. But this is kind of a 4,000-ish hour original tractor. And it came off of a dairy farm by Cresco, Iowa, 160 acres. We bought it in 2001. Dale had repowered it. When I worked in the dealerships, we dynoed it. It dynoed 112 horsepower. So,
would this have had the white decal on it too? Because
Yes, the white decal, 69, that decal came along. So the 55 series was introduced new for 69.
okay,
Very few were produced. 69, 70 was a downturn year. 71, that decal got canceled somewhere during the year. This tractor, I believe, was a May of 71 tractor. And that sticker disappeared shortly thereafter because, bear in mind, all the old Oliver guys, this is a swear word.
yeah,
Nobody liked white. My dad, we had, when I was a kid, had a 1950T front wheel assist, and we had such engine troubles with it. We traded it off at Meyer's for a really clean original 7020 Alice Chalmers, so we never went white until the 2000s actually, but there was always a lot of resentment. This word, to an Oliver guy, white, that's no good. And so many Oliver guys, you know, I know a lot of guys around here, they switched to John Deere. I guess we just never did.
so you're close to Lodermeyer's. I mean, Lodermeyer's was your dealer, but
Meyer's was Alice Chalmers.
yeah,
Our dealer was Dosdall Implement.
Yep.
At the corner of 6 and 1.
so would they technically be a Red Wing address or?
That is Red Wing by half a mile. So,
Okay, because I remember the building up there. I'm trying to think, when did they close?
They officially closed in 2019.
Oh, really?
Now, Bob, I've gotten to know Bob and Rich very well through the years. My grandpa started by going to Earl, and I can allude to that a little bit if you want, but what Bob told me one time is he had one red stripe 2105 white on the lot, brand new, which would have been new for 82.
Yep.
And he said he bought the dealership from his dad Earl in 1979. He signed a contract with 10 brand new tractors in 79 with white when he switched the name to Dosdall Implement Company, and it took until 1983 to alleviate all 10 new tractors he took on. And that red stripe 105, they were able to transfer it out of the store. He never sold it. So I don't know if he never really explained if they were still able to order tractors, to what point. But our family, we worked with Dosdalls very long, many, many years.
Did they sell AGCO parts there?
They never alluded to how it worked. I could go there and order parts, but I think they were getting them from another dealer.
Okay.
I don't think they were a parts contract, but it would be to them to tell you yes or no to that.
Because they were doing service work there, yeah. Because I remember seeing white tractors parked outside there.
Yes. That was their whole family thing. They were all about service. So our family's connection to Dosdalls goes all the way back to the early 1940s. Earl Dosdall grew up down Zumbro Falls way, that direction, and he ended up in Red Wing, and he worked at Tesdall Motors.
Yep.
So Tesdall, a lot of us younger people remember them as a Ford dealer. Well, they were John Deere. So they had Ford cars, John Deere farm equipment.
I remember them selling lawn and garden.
Yep, I
John
remember the John Deere lawn and garden signs when I was a kid going into Red Wing. Right across from Dairy Queen, you'd see the John Deere sign and the Ford vehicles.
Yep.
So Earl was their mechanic, their tractor mechanic. Well, my grandpa Wallace, he started off with a John Deere D, and then my one uncle said he had a 36 John Deere B, and they needed service work, so Tesdalls in Red Wing was the place to go. So my grandpa met Earl Dosdall at Tesdall Motors. Well, in the late 40s, Earl decided, I'm going to quit this 9-to-5 world, and he moved out by where he's at now, or where he was at, and he farmed for 1 year. Well, Earl was in such demand, he had all this repair work show up at his door. So he had to fix all these tractors at night. And the work was so great, what Bob and Rich had told me, he decided to sell the farm, keep the corner lot, and build that shop. So he built the shop, and the repair work continued to grow, and a couple years later Oliver came to him and offered him a contract for Oliver.
Okay.
So we followed our mechanic is what we did. So yeah, that's how our connection to Oliver began, all because of Grandpa having John Deere and going to Red Wing. He followed Earl.
Well, I suppose it's probably between Lodermeyer's, Dosdall's there, and then Red Wing Implement. Boy, it was all within, I mean, you're almost equal distance from them all,
Yeah,
aren't you?
so our family went to Red Wing Implement a lot. We had a lot of New Holland A equipment, so Dad always talked about back in the day going to Earl for a lot of stuff. And as Earl lost contract, we didn't have anything Paypec. That's what Earl would have had was Paypec hay. So we ended up going into Red Wing Implement to Toad and Freddie and the gang. And yeah, we had, New Holland hay buying and hay rake.
Yep.
We got a 355 New Holland mill. Them were the people that you really remember. Our next door neighbor, when Dad was a kid, Willard Allen was a parts guy at Red Wing Implement. He went to our church, and it's just all these people,
But they couldn't talk you into a Massey, though, huh?
I don't think Dad was really looking to buy machinery.
Yeah.
I know Dad liked the Oliver because I think he was just comfortable with it. Dad was a dairyman.
Yep.
And, it's just circumstantial. It's just the brand we had,
Yep.
So yeah, I never really asked Dad that question. Oh, why didn't you buy, a Massey or whatever? He did comment one time in recent years in 1977, farming was really, really good. And he said to Grandpa, he was in partnership with Grandpa, oh, let's go buy a new tractor to replace the 1650. And Grandpa said, well, why would I want to do that? I want to retire soon and I don't want to spend money, so pay taxes and who cares, I guess. And we still got the 1650 to this day.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, Red Wing Implement was the Massey New Holland dealer.
Yep.
So Donsdall sold White or Oliver.
Yep.
Paypec.
OMC.
They were Owatonna.
Yep, Owatonna farmhand.
Okay, so there were a lot of, so even on our side of the river, which you're equal distance to the river as I am, just on the other side.
Yep.
And OMC, there was a lot of OMC round balers, feed mills, swathers.
Yeah, and they said they sold a lot of skid loaders out of Dosdall. They never had dealer stickers, so you can't verify it, but they said a lot of the 550 Olivers they sold in the day got traded in for that first round of skid loaders while they were an OMC dealer.
Okay.
Them old green OMCs.
And OMC became Mustang.
Became Mustang, yeah. Now our family, we started with a John Deere skid loader, an OMC John Deere.
Yep.
And Red Wing Implement having New Holland, that's where we would go for parts. We had a 445 gas, New Holland.
Yep.
So back in the day, Red Wing Implement was Minneapolis Moline.
Okay.
And one comment that both Fred and Bob had commented is that Toad and Earl were good friends, and they mutually decided, being they were both Red Wing address, that Red Wing Implement was willing to give up and not go White, and Earl took on White.
Okay.
Because I suppose corporate would have said,
Yep.
we got to eliminate one, and they handled that on their own, it sounded like.
And that's when
when they took on Massey, yeah. So,
Okay. Huh, that's interesting.
yeah.
But yeah, so New Holland, livestock, haying equipment
Yep.
you guys had. And yeah, and today, Lodermeyer's, ironically, is Massey Ferguson.
Massey Ferguson and all the parts.
Yeah, they handle it all. Everything that those three dealerships, so three competing dealerships are now handled by one under the same company.
Yeah, yeah. Funny how that all goes.
It really is. But yeah, we can sit down and we'll talk about small dairying. But before we go sit down, you do got one more workhorse up here. Yeah. Now, 145s, were there more two-wheel drive or front-wheel assist?
It's a good question.
Because the big ones are rare, and
Correct.
two-wheel drive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the 195, there's just 2-3, I believe. Trouble is this tractor, the black frame or any workhorses, you're playing with mere hundreds of tractors,
Yep.
and you just don't see them for sale ever, so you really don't get a gauge of the sample. You know, I've seen a few two-wheel drive 145s, but most, yeah, I guess they would be front assist, but you only see 15, 20 in a lifetime. That's a
Right.
small sample.
Right.
So, yeah.
So then it went from 145 to 170,
Yeah, 170 would have been the next bigger.
and that would be an 8.3.
A3 Cummins, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So, and that would have been, with the difference between the 170 and 195, would that be intercooler or P-pump maybe or something?
Probably
or?
pump change, probably an intercooler or something on that.
Okay. Yep.
Now, you go to the 170 and the 195, it's 1,000 PTO only.
Okay. So this going further back, so then there was a 140 white prior to this, right?
Correct.
And prior to that, would that have been a 2135?
2135 to get the PTO, the
Okay.
dual speed PTO option.
And that would have been a Perkins.
No,
Hercules?
Hercules,
Okay. So a 2155 was always 1,000 ohm.
1,000 only. It went over that 1,000 horsepower level.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So
150, 1,000 only.
we should show your sign up on top here. Now this isn't the one from Dodds Dolls, is it?
Nope, that one's tucked away. This sign up here is that was bought on eBay
Okay.
for $20.
You did all right.
I did okay. I had to go up by Alexandria. That sign, I was told, was from New House Equipment out of Alexandria.
Did you get both sides or just one?
What you see right there. And
Okay.
when I got there, I bought it on eBay, and the guy said, he said to me, I asked the question, does it come with the can for the lights? He said, yep, it sure does, but it's only one side. I said, I'll bid, opening bid at $20, bought it, and I drive all the way up there, and I said, where's the can? He said, what can? It's on it. You can show it. There's a trim around the sign there.
Yep.
He thought that was the can. I said, no, the lights go in there. Well, I'm so sorry. If you don't want it, I get it. It's fine. I'm like, it's not a big deal. He said, tell you what, just give me a $10 bill and just take the sign to make it right.
Wow.
I was okay at 20. I was more than okay at 10.
Yeah.
So yeah, being it's missing parts of it, I said, let's put it on the shed.
Yeah.
So
We'll go in out of the wind.
yeah.
All right. So the 1650 here with a white loader, by the way, right?
Just the third one we've put on it. This is our third loader. This tractor here, Grandpa bought it used in 1969. Dad was drafted, and they replaced an 880. And this tractor is just keeps on going. It's been overhauled 3-4 times. It's got over 25,000 hours on it. What helps is we've never really had much hired help here, so it's seen very few drivers.
Yep.
Kind of saved it. But it's when we had our farms a sesquicentennial farm, we had this put in the pitcher. It's just an average, you know, we grind feed with it every week, but I guess it's been here since '69. It's been here way too long, but it becomes a part of the family, you know.
The feed mill, has that been here a long time?
Dad bought that new from Toad, mid '80s. It's a 355.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's when we were milking cows, you didn't use it a lot, but now that I got steers here, it's, you know, a batch a week minimum.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good mill.
Start filling the crib again.
Probably not. Probably not. It's leaning. But yeah, it's the fun little connections of the farm. You know, most farmers can fondly remember a certain piece of machinery or maybe a pickup. You know, and this tractor here, this is the first tractor I ever drove.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had to go square bale. We had a 62T Oliver baler and put in first gear and drive straight and know where the clutch is when the wagon's full. So
Yeah. Yep. We were riding on the wagon with stacking hay or to have a kicker?
That I was in this seat, and it was a chute baler.
Okay.
So there was
Yep.
always a guy on the back, and Dad always preached gentle on the clutch.
Oh yeah, yeah. My
Very
grandpa,
gentle.
grandpa, I don't know, when he got old, he ripped the tongue off of a wagon one time, popping the clutch.
Now,
And they didn't stop till he was halfway across the field, just dropping bales on the ground.
it didn't notice.
Yep.
Like I said, this is the third loader this tractor's seen. It's funny to think this tractor was the big tractor in the neighborhood in '69. This was a factory narrow front tractor too. We kept knocking off a wheel, so Bob and Rich had this wide front, and they helped us out. And yeah, it's just used to push a lot of snow and scoop a lot of everything. And luckily, the advent of skid loaders came along, and this loader's pretty much just a grab handle like you see me doing right now when
Yep.
you climb on the tractor. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it ain't a quick attach.
no. I always remember as a kid, try to line up them pins and
Oh yeah.
listen to Dad as you hooked them up. So,
Yep.
yeah. Show you the other two here quick too.
Well, a 3-bottom automatic reset plow. Is this 18s, 318s, 316s?
I think that one's a 16.
But they couldn't have sold too many of these. I mean, you look at the clearance, and that's the white plow was always pretty famous. I mean, and that much clearance on a 3-bottom plow, there couldn't have been many of these sold.
Well, they're out there, but it seems like you see them in Pennsylvania, out east. Like around here, Dad had a 4340 Oliver trailer plow.
Yep.
And then, yeah, it just, things move so quick there. This stuff didn't sell locally well. And then right next door to it here is actually a Case 308. And next to that's a Ford 151, which are all made by White.
Yep.
If I would have known you were so interested in these plows, I could have cleaned the weeds, but they're all spring auto reset.
Well, Case bought International Harvester to get full line, to get the combines, because Case by the 1980s basically sold tractors, and then their tillage equipment was made by somebody else.
Made by White.
Even the discs and everything.
The
too?
discs were White, the plows were. I think that disc chisel was what, maybe a Landau or something?
Okay.
Remember that concert till?
Yep.
That wasn't a White. But one interesting note, you can see it on this Ford. Look at how the tongue sticks out so far on the Ford.
Yep.
The White is shorter for draft purposes. So they were contracted to make a plow, but they made them draft worse than their own plows due to the tongue length.
Yep.
And then up in the barn, I got an Oliver 508 spring reset, and them are really hard to find. So these plows, these 508 plows came out about 1974.
Okay.
And it just, silly habit or something. I just always thought, even though I don't use them, it's neat. 3-bottom, it's the baby of the semi-mount.
Right.
But then you want the big heavy reset. So it's the modern plow in the smallest configuration. And then you get a gauge wheel on. I think 2 of them have gauge wheels. So
Well, that's what's crazy. I'm thinking of tractors that were capable of pulling a 3-bottom plow would struggle pulling this up the road in road gear.
Yeah.
It'd be, I mean, that's a heavy plow.
It's a lot of plow there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of plow.
That's kind of funny. Okay, so we should, as long as we're talking about the Whites and the Olivers, you part Whites and Olivers out.
Correct. Yep. I was originally an implement mechanic. I went to school for diesel mechanics. I graduated out of Goodhue back in 2001. Growing up, I've always enjoyed farm machinery. That's always been my thing. My mom's side comes from machinery interests heavily. I had an uncle that was a mechanic at Paul Kuhn Implement in Fort Atkinson, Iowa, which is now Franzen Sales and Service. My Uncle Jim died young. If you get people that follow your page, they might remember that name. He died in the early 90s. I think he was about 41. But nevertheless, so I went to school to be a diesel mechanic. I worked at a few dealers, with my last stop being SEMA Equipment in Wanamingo. And the economic downturn of 2008, they said whatever they said. I don't know I was released, I guess we'll say. That's the way I feel about it. Looking backwards on it, they gave me kind of a line, but I lost my job. I was engaged to be married to my wife that summer. We had just bought a house within a month or two of that happening, and you were in scramble mode. So I said to myself, well, we got to apply for jobs. We got to find something to do. And I've always been around these Olivers and Whites, and I know them. You know, when you farm with stuff, you get used to it. And when I was working in the dealer setting, like I remember when I was at SEMA Equipment, the one salesman, Dean Schutte, came up to me and they traded in a 3010 John Deere. And they had an entire tractor plus a partial parts tractor. And he came up to me. I was the lawnmower mechanic for him, and he said to me, you seem good with machinery. He said, would you be interested in a hot deal on that 3010 parts tractor, the remnant tractor? I can sell the obviously the good tractor, but I don't want all these parts, you know. And we, you know, had a small discussion, and he gave me a price, and I took them parts, and I was able to market it and make a profit, and it kind of lit a little fire of excitement, you know. So anyways, in 2008, after I lost my job there at John Deere, I'm scrambling, what am I going to do? So I kind of had in my head, I know these Olivers and Whites, so I would see, you know, a few different people parting stuff out, and you kind of like, well, that seems like something I could do. So yeah, me and the wife first met. She grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin down by Sparta. We were at Dairy Expo, and we went to McFarland's down in Sauk City, and I bought 2 front end weights for an Oliver and brought them home. The next day I found a buyer and doubled my money, so I started from nothing, and it just took off from there, you know. And buy something that needs a little work. You know, at first you thought you'd maybe tinker and resurrect. I kind of learned people like to tinker. They don't want to buy something good running all the time. Everybody likes a project, and there's always people looking for parts. So I always say 2008 I started my tractor parts business, and I've had quite a fun run of it, I guess. It's well over 300 tractors through here, and this is just part-time work for me. You know, besides farming here, I work for the post office, and when I'm bored, then I deal with tractor parts. It's just, oh, it's, you know, it's Saturday afternoon, and the customer needs a set of rims. Well, we'll go get them off a tractor, and we'll get them loaded quick, you know, type of deal. It's not full time.
So the farming though, you grew up. This was a dairy farm.
Yeah, we milked about 40 head here. We never really had much for employees. Yeah, we sold to Mid-Am. We were Mid-Amers here. The Goodhue area was originally Goodhue Creamery, and Goodhue Creamery dissolved into Mid-Am and Zumbrota. So, you know, that was the identity of our farm. My grandpa was a dairyman, and yeah, it was a good way to grow up. But you know, everything's got to change, and that's just the way it has to be.
So I remember the Mid-Am plant down in Zumbrota.
Yep, still there.
Yep, and
BFA.
yep, but yeah, I think I talked to somebody else that they had shipped to Goodhue for the creamery. And you milked with your dad. When after you graduated, you got a job and stuff. Were you still helping your dad?
So 2001 is when I graduated. I have a younger brother and sister. We were always included with volunteering, I guess, helping on the farm. We were told, you live here, you're going to help here. So when I graduated, I went to tech school in Austin. I always enjoyed coming home, and you know, you'd pick up, you know, an evening shift or a morning shift. When I was in high school too, I would help Dad in the morning, and I actually went east of Belchester for a guy, and I milked his 100 cows in a parlor where we were stanchion barn. So you really thought that was something to get into a parlor.
Yeah.
You know, that was pretty big time. It was kind of interesting looking back on the Hispanic population for farm labor didn't come into play in the Goodhue area until 2002, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
And being I graduated in '01, I don't remember any Hispanics, and it was very common for us high school kids to take on helping a dairy farmer, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I did, you know, besides Dad. Is Mom and Dad are like, well, you want spending money and stuff. We're not going to pay you. You get food, you know.
Right.
But I don't know. It changed really quick. There was a large exodus in dairy right about that time. I think a lot of guys, like my dad. Dad was physically wore out in '03. I remember the farm economy being in a good slump in 2003.
It was. So milk prices were $10 a hundredweight, and it was right before mad cow. So '04 was probably the most money I ever made milking cows when they closed the Canadian border to replacement cattle. So at that point, the dairy, the model had changed where it became, that's when BST was really getting pushed. So you'd calve in a heifer, you'd never even breed her back. You'd just BST this heifer and you'd keep milking and milking and milking, and then eventually you'd cull her. And that was easy to do when you had Canadian cattle that were coming in due to Canada's quota system.
Sure.
You know, the reproduction was fine up in Canada because they really didn't need to push their cattle. So we had all these Canadian replacement heifers coming in. Well, then suddenly that just dried up.
Yeah.
And then milk prices went up. But yeah, '03 was $10 a hundredweight.
Yeah. It was a great way to grow up. The dynamics changed so quick.
And you didn't think, well, when you graduated, wanting to expand and...
I never enjoyed the cattle. Like I said earlier, even as a little kid, loved machinery. Tractors. I love tractors, and you know, you can ask my mom and dad. They remember me as a little kid rattling off all this tractor stuff, you know.
Yep.
Dad was the cattleman. Dad, I don't think he's a subscriber to Hort's Dairyman, but if he is, it's probably sitting on the counter and he'd be reading it today if it's in the house. I don't know if he gets it or not, but everything about Dad was dairying. He loved cattle and taking care of cattle, and before that BST, you know, we had a pretty good herd in the county. I always remember our family being in that top 25 of the DHIA report quite often, and once that BST hit, we did not do it. And, and it was the beginning of the end, you know. We just dropped right out of the chart, and everybody else took off like wildfire. And you know, Dad's body started failing him, and if nobody else wants to milk cows, that's why the cows had to go. And they went on December 23rd, 2003.
Okay.
So yeah, some days you walk in the old barn, you know, you hear the weird things that you only your memory remembers, you know. But I don't know. You can't be a dairyman just because anymore. You gotta love it, you know. It's not something you can force on somebody, and that was one thing. Mom and Dad, they didn't force. I mean, they'd force us to help, but they never said to us, well, you have to take over the farm, you know. I wanted to buy the farm, and we've been here a long time, so you know, the tractor parts and the farming and working in town makes it work for me.
But you got you buy bull calves then and raise some steers?
In the last few years, I was able to hook up with a guy still milking cows to get some wean calves. So I got a full lot of mostly Holstein steers out there.
Okay.
Buy them weaned, take them to finish. The entire cow yard cemented off. That was one thing Dad hated as a kid. He didn't like muddy cattle, so Dad spent the money in the day to cement the cow yard.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dad built that nice cattle shed for our young stock in '93, and I just figured, well, at first it was like, well, Dad just needs help, and then it all of a sudden becomes I'm buying some cattle, and a year or two later it becomes all your cattle, and you buy the farm, and it's all your own problem.
So he was raising steers then after the dairy cows.
Yeah, after the cows left, Dad kept the remaining young stock, bred it out, would sell springing heifers.
Yep.
As they bled through the system. I remember probably about the spring of 2000, must have been spring of 2005, the cow yard was emptied. There was no animals on the place, and Dad kind of commented, it doesn't seem right, you know, the farm's quiet.
Yep.
And I don't remember. I didn't buy them initial cattle, you know, how we obtained them or what, but we had some animals, maybe 20, 30, maybe up to 40 head.
Yep.
You know, you had to keep the feed fresh and moving, but I just looked at it after I bought the farm in 2017. I kind of ran some math, and I said, if I'm going to have cattle, I might as well maximize my numbers, so all the corn that I can raise, I put through my animals, which is always roughly 75 to 80 head a year.
Okay.
Being a 160-acre farmer, maintaining a crop rotation, that's about what I can produce here.
So then are you feeding hay and then just corn and pellets, or?
Correct, yep. And Dad used to have a lot more corn. I was able to switch that over to just raise some soybeans, a 5-year rotation. So we still raise oats here, and I sell standing hay to some existing dairies in the area yet to maintain that rotation, and then we sell oats back to Warner Seed in Dundas.
Yep.
If anybody's ever heard of them, and they've commented to me, I'm one of just a few customers left they buy seed back from.
Okay.
And they repackage it and sell it to their customers. But
We run for a combine.
hire it done.
Oh, really?
Hire it done.
Okay.
Yep. Up until the last couple of years, it was always a guy local here with a conventional John Deere. Last couple of years, it's a guy that knows how to run his fancy new John Deere. It doesn't beat the straw up too bad.
Okay.
He does a good job too. So, yeah, we haven't owned a combine here since the early '80s, and that's been a pull type combine from Grandpa.
Okay.
With so few acres, there's no justification of a combine.
Now, are you the corn? You're not putting any corn silage up anymore, or nothing?
Nope. Silos sitting empty. Both silos are empty. You just take it as shelled corn, put it into bins up here on the place, and put it through that New Holland mill to crack it.
Okay. Yep. And then put the steak maker pellets with it.
Yep. Blend in the pellets and call it a ration. Throw it in the steer stuffer.
Yep. Offer them a little hay though for.
Yep. I always got a bale of hay on the yard for them. So
Yeah.
takes a little bit longer to push them along, but I don't know.
If they don't die, that's
the thing. It sucks enough when they die from other things. You don't need them to get completely overloaded with corn.
Yeah.
Every group.
Yep.
And it's kind of enjoyable in the summer to cut hay, rake hay.
Yeah, doing that kind of stuff again after I hadn't done it for so many years is kind of nice, you know. And I always said, like, for my kids to learn how to drive tractor, if they're going to help me with field work, well, what am I going to have them do? I'm not going to have them plant. I'm going to turn them loose. They're going to learn with a 30-foot field cultivator. Like, that's kind of
scary,
right? So you get them out raking hay, like I learned to rake hay, and and then they can haul manure. They can
work their way up.
Right, where turn them loose. Like, well, here, go run the sprayer with 90-foot booms. I don't,
Right.
Yeah,
my oldest, we've been working with them to realize, counting rows and how to assemble, and then obviously right on the fender with him driving. So hopefully latches on this year a little bit more.
Yeah.
12 years old, there's a learning curve yet.
Oh. Mm-hmm. No. So the sign behind you, so that white sign That's almost like the white truck's emblem, ain't it?
Oh, the green one behind?
Yeah.
Black?
Yep.
Yeah, that was the original white motor sign from mid-70s until 1980. So that particular sign there says Greenberg's. That would have been Greenberg Implement out of Anoka, Minnesota. And they probably went out of business, it's probably pushing 15 years ago. I bought that on their going out of business sale. It was an online only sale. The other panel was junk, and these green white motor signs are really hard to find. They're not as stout of plastic as the later ones, so
Okay.
it's got good color. I thought, well, let's put it up in this garage. Looks real nice.
Yeah.
Then the black one next to it here, everybody likes a good generic name like sales and service on it. It fits everybody can be a sales and service guy when it comes to a sign. And that sign, that came from Beach Implement of Marathon City, Wisconsin, which is over by Wausau. And they had advertised in the Harper Oliver Collector magazine that they were going to wind down business operations, and this sign was one of a couple signs I was able to get out of that dealership. This is a complete sign, but it is obviously just the single panel. I got the rest of it
Yep.
stored away, but like I said, being you got wall space that basically fit the signs, I thought, well, it's really fun to enjoy a sign. It's
Right. You got to look at them.
You got to look at them to appreciate all the money you spend on this stuff. I got plenty of other signs. A lot of them are not displayed hardly at all. I guess, like all of us, we hope to be able to afford a nice building someday to hang this all up. So,
like the Surge one too.
yeah, my grandparents had an original sign that was like that, and sadly, my dad took the original sign and used it as a calf pen divider.
Yeah.
Always a resourceful dairy farmer, reuses everything, and Dad took that sign and made a calf divider. Well, I found it back many years ago, and it was basically unreadable except for where it says Wallace and Esther Meyer in Goodhue, Minnesota. That corner was readable, and I purchased that sign on an auction south of Goodhue. It was in the scrap pile, but it was repainted red. Somebody painted the barn, with the spray gun, and it was red, but you could see the embossed Surge pipeline milking system script.
Yep.
So I knew that sign, and being my script was readable, I took that sign, their Mike Meyer sign used to be in Mazeppa, and he moved to Chester, Iowa. I took him that sign with the measurements, and a good friend of mine has an original sign like that with his brother's name on it to color match and pattern match. And Mike recreated that sign at a pretty reasonable rate. So it's a nice tribute sign, I call it. You get up next to it. Obviously, it's not original, but it's as good as it's going to get. So.
Did you guys have a Surge pipeline?
Yes, it was all Surge equipment. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people in the Goodhue area went down to Pine Island for milk equipment back at that time.
Yep.
So there were a lot of these Surge signs in the area.
There was a dealer in Zumbrota, wasn't there?
Yeah, Frederick's there. We just didn't go there.
Okay.
So I don't know why, but you just hear a lot of people that are in the Goodhue area when you ask them about milking equipment, Pine Island. So they must have just had really good price or something.
So you stayed Surge right up until?
We were Surge until, I remember as a kid, Dad finally switching over to Westphalia. Goodhue had a Westphalia dealer, Wayne Canadian.
Oh, yep.
Dad switched over in the late 80s, early 90s. He switched over. The units were Westphalia there.
Okay.
So yeah, we kind of had a mixed match. Milk pump was Surge, different things, but the actual unit switched over to Westphalia there.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, Wayne didn't hand out signs saying that you use
No.
this equipment, so I don't have one.
No, that kind of went away. Even I mean,
That's the romantic 1950s, 1960s of agriculture. People got signs and thank you gifts from who they bought from a lot of times, you know.
well, yeah. Just think back then, if you were selling pipelines, you think of the number of small dairy farms around here. I mean, you could sell 200 pipelines, and I mean, you're just scratching the surface on the number of dairy farms.
Well, even Dad mentioned like our big silo here is a Rockite. Rockite was based out of Hutchinson, Minnesota,
Yep.
and that silo was sold to us by Wolf and Larson in Goodhue, which became Larson Industries. And you know, like Dad mentioned, in '79, our next door neighbor put up one. We put up one. I think them silo guys, farm automation guys in the late '70s, it had to have been gangbuster, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Unreal.
Well, they were, you know, the move towards, farm automation and, less labor. So I think the difference was that what we've seen. So there's always been some improvements and advancement in agriculture. That's nothing new. And there was some expansion, but it exploded somewhere along the way. So a lot of it was just people replaced labor with equipment. And then we've seen then eventually it just took off and just became farm consolidation and
You know,
massive increases. But yeah, there was just a time where, one family just, they didn't, your kids grow up. Well, one son could keep milking those same cows because now they had a pipeline. They weren't using buckets anymore. They weren't, a silo unloader to replace the going up and pitching silage down, a barn cleaner to replace, wheeling the manure out every day. And then that was replaced with, well, we could do this, on a larger scale, a massive scale. And then, we'll just get more hired labor, and then farm size just grew, and then the creameries went, well, hell, we could just drop a semi tanker off at this guy's place. We don't have to have a milk truck going farm to farm to farm to picking them up, and it's crazy how fast it happened. I mean,
like around here, I remember Showquist Dairy out by White Rock was one of the first big dairies, and we went out and viewed that. Now, I don't remember what the number was. Was it maybe 300? Maybe somebody in the comments will remember that. But 300 at that time was big. You know, like growing up, we had Harlan Stair was big. Kenny and Kurt Shrimp were big. These were 300 cow herds, and that was big. Where, like I said, we were 40 cows, and 40 was almost normal yet until the late 90s.
right.
And then just all of a sudden, there was a small blip, you know, people maybe went up to 100, and then just like that, everybody, except for the guys that are still in it, just, it seemed like they left overnight. Within a couple of years, you know, it was real quick.
So, I was just talking about John Deere 7810 tractors, and 7810s, when they were coming off of lease returns, so a new tractor is just a lease return. 50 cow dairy guys bought those tractors because a 50 cow dairy was enough. You could have a pretty new tractor with 50 cows.
You know,
And then that just went, well, a manure spreader or a haybine or manure spreader or anything in 1998 versus what it sells for today,
it just, yeah.
quadrupled in price, you know.
Like for me, running 160 acres here, the machinery investment, I have everything except for a combine. It's mind blowing to me to have this much money out for, hate to say it, so little.
Right.
And the opportunities to grow are basically zero.
It's pretty tough.
It's very tough. I've never met anybody that said it's easy. Nothing in agriculture is easy. But one thing that I always remember as a kid, Goodhue was a very community type of town, and it still is. But until people quit milking cows, you didn't understand how a neighbor could stab another neighbor in the back over renting ground. When I
Well,
was a young kid, that didn't exist. You know, neighbor was
no.
stuck, you go pull them out, you know.
Well, and when around us, it wasn't. I always say it was like the RFS. When the RFS happened, that's when everybody dropped the cows and started crop farming. Um, Prior to that, if you had enough land to feed your livestock, you're like, well, we're good.
That's exactly the way my dad said it. My dad, through the years, so we've been on this farm for 153 years, which is nearly unheard of. I'm fifth generation. But Dad commented in 1969 when he was drafted, we showed that 1650 Grandpa bought. Grandpa and Dad were running a neighboring farm of 160 acres. They were up to 320, and Dad got drafted. And that neighbor came to Grandpa and he said, "When I want you to buy that farm for 300 an acre in 1869, then Bruce can have a farm when he comes back." And Grandpa told him, "What if he doesn't come back?" You know, so Grandpa didn't buy that farm. And then I remember the next door neighboring farm came available 2003, 2004, and I remember Dad getting the phone call from the realtor on the property, and he hung up on him. And I said, "Well, who was that?" And he said who it was. I said, "Well, what did he want?" "Well, he wants us to buy said farm." I said, "Well, then why did you hang up on him? Why didn't you ask me what I thought?" He said, "I don't need it because I got enough work as it is." And
Well,
it's a change of mentality that's happened. You know, everybody wants more and bigger and spread their costs out. And like my dad in previous generations looked at it, I just want to feed my cattle and I'm happy.
yeah, there was, if anything, so what would have been common, like for your dad to come home from the military, would be let's add 20 cows. Because your grandpa wasn't quite ready to retire, so then your dad would come. Well, then when your grandpa does retire, then that's when they add a couple more silos. They add, a new barn cleaner. Maybe they put in a manure pit, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Where, and then in a lot of cases, you kind of had enough land to feed those extra 20 cows already. You
yeah,
didn't need a bunch more ground because you're like, well, you know, maybe we had some sows. We'll get rid of the pigs and we'll just milk a few extra cows. Or maybe we're selling a little corn to the co-op and you're
right,
like, well, we'll just feed that now. So guys didn't grow the way they did once it became all about crops. Then it completely just went to land, land, land.
right.
That's where we saw it used to be a if somebody was selling a farm, the silos, the barn, the sheds, that was kind of how you judged the value of that farm. And then it just became strictly about the land.
Right.
And we're not better for it.
I remember inquiring on a building site about 2005, and I asked those questions to the realtor about the silos and stuff, and he had been in the business so long, he wasn't taken back by the questions, but I think I was the only one that asked such questions, and the price was so disproportionate, and there was no land going with it. It made 0 sense to even pursue it, with me bearing in mind the home farm here would be eventually available for me to buy down the road. You know, I was the only sibling that showed any interest in the farm, and Mom and Dad never pushed this on me, but I always had in the back of my head that the day would have come that you'd need to make the decision, and I wanted to buy the farm.
Yeah.
So what would the gain be to try to buy a different building site? Just live in town and come out to the farm to get your kicks, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It, Yeah. It's amazing how quick the agricultural industry has changed in 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
It's unreal. It's really unreal.
That's why I kind of hope that there is some push towards livestock and somewhat of the changing in the commodities a little bit. They're talking about whether you believe in climate smart agriculture or whatever, but I mean some of that move towards changes up, like what's wrong with growing some small grains again and replacing, say, some of the soybeans, some of the corn in the rotation, and guys that want to get cattle back out on grass, etc. That's not all bad.
It's not bad. It's to try to convince people of it. You can't, you can't force somebody to be a cattleman. And there's so few people that want to deal with the chance of death.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose a buck. Well, cattle farming is
Oh.
it definitely got death loss in it, and it's getting harder and harder to find quality animals. The guy I've been buying calves from has suggested I need to be looking in another avenue. He will be scaling back his dairy operation. This is recent news for me, and to find calves like I think I'm down to just going to Lanesboro. And I'm not a big fan of buying sales barn cattle because anybody that has cattle know what you get there. You get pretty much the worst of the worst.
Unless you might have to go cow calf.
There's been some thought of that. Everything on this farm is tillable, so it's hard to want to go any other avenue. But I don't know. Being I'm young, you got to be willing to think of things outside the box.
Well, and if you could rent some pasture, or I mean, the other thing you could do with being all tillable. So that was my big thing. Is until we bought another farm that had some pasture, I just didn't. After the dairy cows left, there wasn't going to be any cattle. But if you got the oats ground, if you've got if you got some corn, etc., you might have to sacrifice a couple acres to give them a yard, more of a yard.
More of a yard, yeah.
But then take the small grains off and graze that,
Right.
again. And then when the crops come off in the fall, you run your corn stalks,
Yeah, it's tough with having that town job. Talking personally,
Right.
to have that tie down, you wish you could generate more income to stay on the farm more. That's become the tough part too. Is margins are non-existent. So it's hard to be able to commit to watching a herd of cattle out on pasture when you gotta chase your family and chase the town for work. It seems.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's where, like me always being, I don't have enough to only farm ever since the dairy cows left, but I have way too much for it to be just, well, it's a side gig. So then that's where the being self-employed is always, because then when it's time to get your farm done, you just go do your farming. And that's where
I'm lucky with the post office. I have some flexibility. I'm a window clerk, so you get in the summer, you kind of cut hay to those windows at times.
Yep.
But it's nice to have some leave time. I always try to get out there in the fall to get harvest done and wrap up all my projects, all my tractor parts stuff, clean up stuff, and
yeah,
try not to have too many fires burning and it's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
It's a sick feeling when you see that first snowfall coming and you got 3 weeks of work outdoors.
Oh yeah.
And you cram.
Yep. Yeah. Well, so if anybody's looking for some Oliver parts, where do they find them?
I used to advertise on Yesterday's Tractors. That website has drastically changed. I am on Minneapolis Craigslist. If you are in the Facebook world, if you're a member of Oliver and White Tractors, that page is mine. I resurrected pretty much an extinct page. That's kind of the premier site for Oliver and White tractor discussion. brand stuff. So we try to have a nice community there. So yeah, I don't know, just try to keep your name out there and let people know I'm trying to keep the brand alive. Being I farm with them, that was kind of part of the reason I started it. You need parts to keep your own equipment going. So
Yeah.
If you're needing any help, like I said, I'm still on Minneapolis Craigslist and that Oliver and White Facebook page. I'm on there. I've never really advertised a lot of word to mouth through the years. It's kind of crazy how that all goes.
Yeah.
But I guess I always say if you do a good job, people will find you, and I try to do the best I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. If you're doing a good job with this stuff, for the most part, people will just kind of
Find you.
Yep. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot. Sounds good.
You bet.